Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by. Welcome to the BIA Knowledge Leadership Webinar. During the presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. If you'd like to ask a question during the presentation, please use the chat feature located in the lower left corner of your screen. If you need to reach an operator at any time over the phone, please press *0. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded Thursday, August 28, 2014. I would now like to turn the conference over to Robin Thompson. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. On behalf of the team at BIA, we want to welcome you to the August Knowledge Leadership Webinar, where we'll be talking about information governance and the law firm. Before I introduce our guest speaker, I'd like to remind you of a couple of things. If you have questions for Leigh, please submit those through the chat window, and we'll queue them up to be answered at the end of the program. And as you leave today, you're going to be prompted to answer a short survey. We use your survey responses to plan our educational series of programs, like today's program, for example, and to continue to improve the services we provide to the community. Now, it is my privilege to introduce our speaker today, Leigh Isaacs. Leigh is the Director of Records and Information Governance in Orrick's Washington office. Though not a lawyer, she has more than 10 years of information governance experience and more than 25 years of experience in the legal field. Leigh assists with records management engagements, and her experience includes deployment of enterprise programs, development of information management and related policies and procedures, creation of retention schedules, on- and off-site storage considerations, including outsourcing, process improvements, evaluation and implementation of technology solutions, and the disposition of information for dissolved entities. Leigh is a longtime member of ARMA and, in fact, is the past president of the Greater Washington, D.C. chapter, on the Board of Trustees for ARMA International Education Foundation, is on the advisory board for the Organization of Legal Professionals, and also a member of the Law Firm Information Governance Symposium. Leigh is a published author and frequent speaker, and if that weren't enough, she holds the distinctions of being an information governance professional, a certified information professional, and an electronic records management practitioner. Leigh, welcome to our August program, and I turn the presentation over to you.
Great. Thanks, Robin, and thanks, everybody, for attending today. Appreciate you taking the time to spend the next hour with me to talk about information and the information governance and the law firm. As you can tell from the intro that Robin gave, I've come to be very passionate about the topic of information governance, as evidenced by my compulsive participation in any sort of IG-related effort that is coming about in the industry. But there's a lot of exciting things that are happening, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of those things with you throughout the course of the next hour. I'm kind of teeing up, some of the things that are happening within law firms and what IG within law firms mean. Will be, of course, we can certainly there's a much deeper dive that can be taken with this topic that, obviously we won't have a whole lot of time for within this next hour. But hopefully we'll leave you all with enough of a background and information that you'll certainly want to dive in and learn a little bit more. So today we'll be talking about what is information governance, what does it mean for law firms, and why should we care, resources, references, and industry organizations, and certifications, making sense of the alphabet soup. So when Robin asked me to speak, and I was very excited about the opportunity, we had a discussion about IG and what is it. Everybody's talking about it now. It's the latest buzzword. eDiscovery has been the buzzword for quite some time, and it seems now it's been replaced by IG. But is it the same as records management, or is it the same as eDiscovery? And I think that there is not necessarily confusion in the industry, but I think that there is in many respects, folks are still trying to figure it out. And we did a informal ILTA survey earlier this year, the International Legal Technology Association, to figure out kind of what's happening in law firms and whether there's some traction and knowledge and awareness about what IG is. And what we realized was, the results of that survey was that there's still at the upper management level some lack of clarity about what information governance really means. Records management really, I think, is easily associated with IG because we're talking about how we're dealing with our information. Records management, I think, in its traditional sense, is we're talking about how we're dealing with our retention, with our disposition. A lot of the times, I think it's easy to stereotype with the file room at the end of the hall where the paper goes to die, and really kind of around that life cycle management. Whereas information governance is more about kind of leveraging the value of the information that you have in addition to the records management functions as well. We'll talk a little bit about that. And it's not necessarily the same as eDiscovery either. Now, I think, and Robin, I think, appreciates this phrase that I know that I've said more than once, but I think that eDiscovery is the best thing that ever happened to records management or information governance, because what that really did was kind of propelled it brought the need to better manage and govern our information to the forefront. We started to find that going through the eDiscovery process was expensive and it was painful, and started to look for how we could lessen the pain that we were feeling from that. And so as a result, we started to see the information governance disciplines start to evolve and gain traction. And so my favorite definition out there, and there's a whole lot of IG definitions if you go out and you do a search for a definition for information governance, but I'm biased. My favorite definition is the one that was established by the Law Firm Information Governance Symposium that was formed back in 2012. And it's an enterprise-wide approach to the management and protection of a law firm's client and business information assets. And I don't need to read the whole thing. You guys can read it. But one of the things that I think that really stands out for me the most about this definition and really makes it distinct from others that I've read is that, number one, it emphasizes the point that it enables lawyers to meet their professional responsibility regarding client information, which kind of distinguishes IG in law firms apart from IG in other organizations. And it relies upon a culture of participation and collaboration within the entire firm. And a lot of the times that's a piece that I've seen missing from other definitions. And IG is just not possible to accomplish if you do not have everybody on board and involved to do their part. And just a couple of points here, kind of going back to the point of governance versus management. Information governance really is not so much, it's not a thing that you do. It is not a task. It's a strategy. It's an initiative. It's a part, it needs to be part of the fabric of your organization. Whereas your management tasks are at the functional, tactical level. So when you're kind of looking at that distinction between information governance and records management in particular, I think that's one very clear way to kind of look and determine the difference between the two. When you're looking at information governance, it's really kind of sitting at that higher level and looking at how the information flows throughout the entire organization. Of course, we're all very familiar with this model. There's probably not anybody on the line that has not seen this. But again, further emphasizing the point and the role that information governance plays in eDiscovery. So I really, I always like to emphasize, because I love information governance, but we're right over here in the very beginning. We're right in the forefront. And if you're doing information governance well, you are able to, all of these pieces that follow on from identification down through presentation are much less difficult, much less expensive to actually work through, because you're dealing with a reduced data set. You're able to get to the right information at the right time when you need it. So this is a survey from 2011. So it is a little bit dated, but I thought it was very interesting to share in talking about what falls under IG. And we see here that we've got records management in the forefront, compliance, storage, archiving, security, risk management, and eDiscovery. I would argue at this point, security has probably bumped up to a higher level in this, and I would probably surmise that big data has earned a spot on this map as well. But again, very telling that even though IG and records management are not one and the same, they are very, very closely related. And what we're seeing in the industry is that I think initially a lot of the leaders that have been emerging to carry the IG torch forward have been coming from the record side of the house. Now this is a trend that I think is changing, and I think it's very exciting because we're seeing information security professionals, CIOs, a variety of different disciplines actually coming forward and kind of grabbing that IG baton and starting to carry it forward. The IG reference model, again, no IG presentation would be complete without this, but really reminding us how we need to be mindful of kind of the linking all of these pieces together. So, and this is what distinguishes, another factor that distinguishes information governance from records management. And I think when we think records management, we're thinking compliance, we're thinking risk, we're thinking about all those really downer things that nobody really likes to have the records manager show up at your door. But when you think about information governance, you're talking about value and how you can use that information for leverage and competitive advantage and for business intelligence. And we'll talk a little bit more about that it's much, much more than just managing the risk components. And so what have been our drivers for change? And there have been certainly drivers for change in all organizations. The legal and regulatory landscape have been huge drivers regardless of industry that have started to bring information governance to the forefront. Law firms have had some additional drivers added to that as well. Our clients are demanding change, and in many situations our clients are a step or 2 or 12 ahead of us. And so they're looking to us to either be on par or a step ahead of them. And they're taking a look under the hood and really exploring and auditing what we do. They're also pushing back and looking at our billing models, and they don't work. So we have to be efficient. So leveraging our information to build in those efficiencies into the way that we work is important to stay competitive. And reminders that information is not solely focused on risk. Global economy perspective, time seen as an asset. A lawyer's time billing however many $100 an hour, spending minutes looking for documents or emails is revenue lost. So again, having good governance over your information is money in the pocket. It also helps with the communication and collaboration. Our teams are kind of going back to the global footprint. Orrick is a perfect example. Most of our matters now are cross teams. We're across offices, across boundaries and jurisdictions. So a lot of the times most of the time we're having to collaborate across offices or in our Europe and Asia offices as well. So having the information in the right place and being able to share and collaborate on that is critical in order for us to meet our business needs. Leveraging the organizational knowledge and having users of the information being empowered and enabled. Oh gosh, and there's more. I'm sure that I'm not the only one that when looking at the pace of the technological change, we're not slowing down. We're continuing to keep up. One of the challenges that I think that we face, and I do come from the records management background, is that nothing really fits in that nice, neat, tidy little box anymore. We used to want to kind of shoehorn everything in and tie it up with a bow, and that's not the way it works. We're looking at cloud solutions and mobility and all of those things that technology is bringing in to support the business, and that has to be factored into any sort of information governance program. And so staying ahead of that is critical as well. Security, again, kind of focusing back on the not so exciting part, I suppose, is managing the risks associated with managing and governing information. I'm sure that we're not the only one we're getting hit on a regular basis from some of our clients with our security audits, making sure that we've got everything locked down as tightly as our clients expect us to. So what are some of the industry trends? Improvements are reported in the management of some ESI. IG must modernize or forever be losing in a game of catch-up. And I think we're already in a place of, I would imagine that everyone on the phone is already in a place of catch-up. I think we all have some sort of a legacy mess that is lingering out there, whether it is data on file shares, email, whatever the case may be. And so making sure that we're kind of dealing with some of our data remediation and keeping up with going forward is absolutely critical to make sure that you're not getting further and further behind. And legal hold processes are more commonplace, but over-presentation, immense challenge to the implementation of effective information lifecycle control. So making sure that we're, again, holding on to the right stuff at the right time and not preserving. So some additional law firm considerations. We've got the ethical considerations that we have to consider, and malpractice. Every year we go through our risk management audit. Our insurance carrier comes in and goes through through the interviews and asks everyone what systems we're using and how we're using them. Factors hugely into the IG program. And understanding that an attorney has a duty to preserve a client's confidences and secrets. And that duty extends to protecting the documents and materials which are obtained or created in conjunction with the representation of the client. So one of the things that, again, I think expands for law firms and creates an additional layer of risk and consideration is that not only are we responsible for our firm administrative documents and information, but we're responsible for the work product that we're generating, and then any of the client information that we're taking in. And there is a different retention and disposition consideration for that client data that needs to be factored in. And so that also is something that is another component of an IG program. And when we get later on in the discussion, we'll talk about some of the reports, the latest reports that came out just this year that takes a deeper dive into that topic. Some additional responsibilities for client files are the security and confidentiality, the unified retention, which is a challenge, right? So most of us still have paper lingering about, and we've got our electronic data lingering about, and making sure that we are addressing our retention and disposition in a unified manner because of, across the board, regardless of what it is. And that we're doing it securely. So if it's in electronic form, that we're doing it in the method that we need to be, and that we've got that audit trail and history. And if it's paper, we're taking care of that securely as well. One of the other, I think, responsibilities and benefits that comes along with a well-defined IG program is the compliance with protective and destruction orders. And this is one of the things that I think does not always come to the forefront of the discussion, but when they do come up, it can become very, very difficult, if not impossible, to be able to ensure compliance with these orders when you're asked to do so, if you can't really determine or identify where that relevant information is. Same thing if served with a subpoena. Most specifically, kind of tying back to exactly what those responsibilities are, and I did not list these out number by number, but overall, the ABA model rules specifically state that lawyers have a duty to, number one, safeguard client property, maintain the confidentiality, adopt the record-keeping practices that protect the client's rights and interests, keep the complete and accurate records, surrender all the property to which the client is entitled or that the client requests upon termination of representation, keeping records for a specified period of time, and obtaining the client consent before destroying records. So this pretty much kind of lays it all out there. Now, in addition to your ABA model rules, there's obviously all of the local opinions that would factor into any sort of governance program that you would put together for your law firm. One of the challenges in law firms, obviously, is that for the client records, there really is no kind of hard line rule or regulation, much like you could get with your HR or your finance documents. So this, a lot of the retention periods and that type of thing are up to interpretation. So your risk or ethics committee will likely be making that determination about what is right for your firm or organization. So some of the benefits of IG are that improved client service. You're able to get things done, get them done faster. Risk mitigation, cost containment. In addition to being able to do things more efficiently, you're able to, whether you're dealing with off-site storage, whether you're dealing with the electronic data storage, if you are making sure that you're only keeping what you need, you're able to keep that cost to a minimum. It also extends to the resources, the people resources that it takes to support those systems and processes as well. And then the competitive advantage in business intelligence. If you can leverage the information for competitive advantage, you can't leverage what you can't get access to. Even for budgeting purposes, having insight into kind of what type of matters you've worked on before and profitability and how long things took to be able to kind of make some smart projections going forward. Those are all things that can kind of help in the analysis and forecasting for future matters. Defensible deletions, another expected benefit of IG. So I thought this was very interesting. 78% believe that a third or more of their information would go away with IG. And that's a pretty significant amount of information, I think. And that does not distinguish between whether it's digital or paper. So that's just overall in general. So this is one of my favorite slides as well. And I suspect some of you may have seen this already, but again, I refer back to the work that was done by the law firm Information Governance Symposium. And this was I'll give a little bit more context around that effort. It was an initiative that was started back in 2012, and it was actually sponsored, and is still sponsored by Iron Mountain. And it is a group of, it's now about 30 to 40 industry leaders, practitioners, vendor experts that come together. They work throughout the year. We work throughout the year to collaborate, talk about topics that are hot in the market at the time. Work on documentation framework, best practices. We meet once a year to get together and kind of hunker down and produce some reports that we think and hope are very valuable to the industry. This was a part of our very first report, which was a proposed framework. And what the group did was kind of sat down and figured out, to the best of our ability, what the information governance principles in a law firm are. And we call this our little process wheel. But we're talking about here like our client information requests. We're dealing with those more and more often. Document preservation, mandated destruction, the firm intellectual property, awareness, information security, IT systems administration, matter lifecycle management. Matter mobility is a big one, and that is a term that you may or may not be familiar with, but what that refers to is the movement of files to and from firms associated with the lateral movement of attorneys. Now, when I started working in law firms, attorneys would go, they would join a firm and they would stay, and that's where they would retire. It doesn't work like that anymore, and we're seeing attorneys on a regular basis go back and forth, and it's a day-to-day task to now transfer these materials back and forth from firm to firm. And so this has become a huge topic of discussion and focus within the law firm records management community in particular. The information mobility, and so to kind of distinguish a little bit, that's the matter mobility is kind of moving the information from firm to firm, but the information mobility is really surrounding more about the support of the 24/7 lawyer. So whether they're in an airport, in a hotel, being able to have access to what they need when they need it. And then obviously records management and disposition. And our third-party relationships. We're now dealing with a lot of I think a lot of us are at the point where we're working with cloud solutions providers, whether it's Box or whomever. Our lit support teams are routinely working with third-party folks that are taking custody of our information and our client information. So we have to work that into our IG program as well. And then monitoring those key processes. I mean, that's really kind of a key point of, there's all these things around the wheel, but on a routine basis, we've got to be going back and checking to make sure that everything is working the way that it should be. And if it's not, going and doing some fine-tuning. And so expanding upon some of those principles, it's important to educate all firm citizens about their IG duties and responsibilities. Going back to the very beginning of the presentation, it takes the collaboration and participation of everyone. And if people are not aware of what their roles and responsibilities are, they can't effectively participate. So the education and training is absolutely critical. Confirming the authenticity and integrity of information, I mean, that goes back to basic records management principle 101. Recognizing that the official record is the electronic, and that's assuming that the jurisdiction does not specify paper. There are some instances, like estates and trusts where you do still need to maintain the paper. But that in particular is key, especially as firms are moving more and more towards a digital environment and storing less paper. There has to be that recognition at the executive level that the official record is the electronic. Storing the information in a firm-approved system, which means that probably doesn't include, flash drives or CDs, DVDs, or whatever device can be plugged into a laptop and kind of taken away. Classifying information under the correct client matter administrative code, and you would think that law firms are actually we've got an advantage over a lot of organizations because we've got this built-in taxonomy that should make it very, very easy for us to categorize things and put things under that client matter number. But still, it's amazingly hard to do sometimes. So it's really important that in that IG program that it's emphasized that anything that you're storing must be put in the right place under the right code. And controlling the unnecessary proliferation of information. Disposition information when it reaches the end of its legal and operational usefulness. I think that is one area where law firms in particular, we've tended to like to keep things forever. We're seeing the tide change with that. Last year at the ARMA Legal Roundtable, there was a lot of discussion about disposition. And it was very encouraging to hear that a lot of firms now we're actually starting to get rid of things. So that was pretty exciting. Securing client and firm confidential or personally identifiable information. This is a very big topic, and actually it was one of the report topics for this year's symposium, talking about HIPAA and securing the PII. Conform all lines of business systems and practice group applications to IG standards. So making sure that everybody is kind of going along with the program. And back to those third parties, if anybody that you're working with is holding on to client or firm information, you need to make sure that they are also complying with the firm's IG standards as well, which means a lot of discussions and contract review and checklists and all of that good stuff. Primary stakeholders, so we're talking about generally administrative management, which would be your HR, finance, marketing, business intelligence, information security, ethical, legal compliance, KM, your IT folks, all representatives from all of these groups really need to have a seat at the table when we're talking about IG. A lot of firms are starting now to form some sort of an IG advisory board, and it may be called an IG advisory board, or it may be another committee that's kind of being leveraged for that purpose. But it's important that voices from all of these groups be represented there. I see a question here, and I'm sorry if I'm just rambling away and I'm missing some of these. Let's see. I work at a large firm, and it seems like most firms are getting eDiscovery, but they still think of records management just as paper and other document management systems. When you talk about IG, sometimes some partners just look at it as a firm expense for some reason. Are they starting to talk amongst firms about how important all of this is? Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think that the conversations are starting to pick up. Again, I think this refers back to that ILTA survey that I was talking about, and I think that for all of us that are on the phone, we really can be the ambassadors, and that's what I think that it's taken to start to continue to get that message upward. I know a lot of my colleagues actually have taken some of these reports that I'll be talking about earlier and kind of strategically placed them on their general counsel's desk or their CIO and kind of highlighted certain pieces. Worked on that elevator speech, right? So something you're going to have a different message with your CIO than you're going to have with your general counsel, and kind of figuring out how you're going to be that salesperson to kind of work your way in the door with the various stakeholders in the firm. It's not an easy thing to do. Sometimes too, I think, and one of the strategies that I have taken is to try to find the low-hanging fruit. What can you go after where you don't necessarily have to incur any expense? So do you have any tools in-house? Are there any projects that you can do where you can start to pick away at things and show some value and take that and then present the benefits of it and tie that into the value of IG? So for instance, we've done X amount of file share cleanup and remediation. This is an IG effort because of X, and we've saved. And so those are the types of things that you can kind of go in and start to do kind of that grassroots picking away at things. It definitely takes it takes some persistence. Which brings me to the perfect slide. So it's a change management effort. To do IG and to do it well, it often involves a culture change. It changes the way that people think. And again, those that are leading the charge, I by no sense of the word would ever have said that I have any sort of skills whatsoever as a salesperson. But yet I find myself having conversations almost on a daily basis where I'm trying to sell some sort of aspect of IG. And that factors into a lot of the change management. I and a lot of my peers actually that I talk to that are working through a lot of IG initiatives are working with our marketing departments to help us put some of that marketing spin on it and to help gain some traction that way. So it takes some creativity for sure. All right. So leading the charge. And well, I'm kind of surprising myself how we're kind of leading right into these. So the individuals that are leading the charge, and we're now seeing a trend of positions emerging, whether they have information governance in their titles, and I'm seeing them more and more often, or folks that are in other roles and are just seeing the value of IG, so they're just kind of stepping into it and running with it. It does take a combination of a lot of different qualities in order to actually make it work and be successful. You have to be able to manage at all levels of the organization, because remember, you have to get that collaboration and participation of everybody. So whether you're working with the attorneys, you're working with the secretaries, you're working with the other administrative staff, you've got to kind of be able to speak to everyone, understand how folks work, and be able to relate at all levels. You've got to be able to have that 30,000-foot up strategic view, but you've also got to be able to kind of drop down into the weeds when you need to as well. You have to be politically astute, and again, this is where no handbook or there's no presentation that is going to lay this out for anyone, because every organization, every firm is different. But understanding the politics within your firm, understanding who to go to be who's going to be your champion, who's going to help you drive things through, how you can get things accomplished. Who do you want to avoid? How do you want to present things? You're going to approach different people different ways. The ability to collaborate, to come in, and because you're working with I often say that where I sit, I feel like I'm the air traffic controller. So I'm working with a lot of different departments, and IT and KM and lit support, and oftentimes I'm connecting the dots. But the key to kind of making and connecting everything is the collaboration and being able to problem solve, and not necessarily come in and steamroll over and come in just with the I've got the solution and we're just going to fix it all. But help me understand what it is we're trying to do. Help me understand the way you work, and then let's work together to figure out the right solution for us. We have to be teachers and educators, and this goes back, Peter, to your question about how to kind of educate about that. We have to make ourselves experts. And IG is so big that admittedly we can't be experts on every single part of IG, but we need to make ourselves experts about something, and find what it is in your firm that is that something that is in most need of being addressed, and then be ready to go out and talk about it and teach about it. You need to have integrity, so you are respected and you're seen as a voice of value. An ambassador. You have to be able to multitask, because you're never doing just one thing at a time. Having that industry leadership, one thing that I have found for sure is that it certainly, in order to move things forward, takes a community of people. Were it not for my peers and the other activities that I'm involved in that have helped me learn and grow, certainly would not have the knowledge that I have, and I continue to learn from folks every day. Being that coach and mentor to your staff and to others, sound judgment, being able to market yourself and having that confidence. And again, I think that's one that can't be understated. Communicating at all levels, being that change leader, which is one of the hardest things, and understanding a complex interaction of data. And I'm sure that there are other bullet points that we could put on here as well, but this is I think we would all agree, is a pretty comprehensive list of qualities that an individual should be possessing to lead the IG charge. All right. So Robin had mentioned at the very beginning some of my certifications. And as we're talking about leading the charge and being teachers and educators, obviously one of the things that adds value and certainly helps in that regard is getting some of those certifications. And I've been asked quite a bit my own view on certifications and whether I think that there's value in this one or that one. And my general viewpoint is that it's an individual thing, and I encourage everyone to explore the various certifications that are out there, see what value there is for you and your career and the direction that you want to take. But there are a lot of terrific opportunities out there to kind of get some of those letters after your name, and I think more importantly for me was the study process and the learning process that I went through to prepare to sit for the exams. So the IGP, which is right here in the middle, is an ARMA International certification. It is, I think it was introduced 2 years ago, and it was the first information governance professional certification that there was. And it's really all comprehensive, has a flavor of records management, information security. I mean, really all the things that we kind of touched on throughout the first part of the presentation. There's also the records management focused certifications, if that's really where your roots are. Some of the legal specific certifications, and the eDiscovery support type certifications. Your business certifications, privacy, the CIPP is another one that is increasing in popularity. And IT certifications. And again, this is not an all-inclusive list of all the certifications that are out there, but a good representation of a lot of the more common ones. We're seeing a lot of, going back to some of the business and audit certifications, a lot of PMPs. There's a lot of folks that are going and getting their project management certification. And also seeing a lot of Lean Six Sigma coming into organizations. So I think that's pretty interesting as well, kind of bringing those process efficiencies into the law firm. So here are a few organizations that have certifications. They also have a lot of information if you are not familiar with them. ARMA International, again, has the Information Governance Professional Certification. They also have a whole lot of great information on their website. Much of their information, even if you are not a member, is free in their bookstore, so I would encourage you to go take a look. AIM has the Certified Information Professional, which is another certification that I hold. And actually the CIP was introduced prior to the IGP. They're somewhat closely related. I would say that the CIP is probably a little bit more technology focused, which surprisingly I passed anyway. But again, AIM has a lot of great resources to offer as well. Very focused, I think, on the electronic side of the house. And the OLP, which is the Organization of Legal Professionals. Last fall, they launched an Information Governance Certificate Program. And that is one that actually it takes that deeper dive. It's a 12-week course that actually dives into the various aspects of law firm and law department information governance throughout that 12-week period. And just because I like the pretty little graphics, but OLP, ARMA, AIM, ILTA, I would be remiss if I did not mention ILTA. Any of you who are not ILTA members, last August, ILTA rebranded their Risk and Records peer group to the Information Governance peer group. So that is another good area where you can get some education and IG content. Sedona, obviously, the we've got the law firm IG Symposium there. And the little IG squiggly thing with the red dot on top is actually the IG initiative. And I'll cover that a little bit more detail in just a sec. Okay, so if any of you, I would encourage all of you, if you want to take a more in-depth look into law firm IG, these reports are free. They're out on the Iron Mountain website. You put your name in. They don't bother you too much. But the proposed law firm information governance framework is the 2012 report, and in that report it outlines kind of the proposed definition and what it is. It takes a village is the second part, which kind of talks about all of the different groups that come together. The Part 3 is on security, and then Part 4 is kind of building the program and marketing and going forward. In 2013, the group did two things. They put together the report Building Law Firm Information Governance, which prime your key processes, which actually took that process wheel that we looked at earlier and built out into things that actual tangible things that people were doing. So we talked to firms and found some best practices, because all of us are out there doing some things that are really, really done well. And so we gave some examples of best practices in the industry. And then we also released an emerging trends report. And in that report we talked about, there was a report on big data, predictive coding for IG, and 24/7 access. That was the other 2013 report. Now this year we actually released 5 reports. One of them was eDiscovery and information governance. And so as I mentioned earlier, that one really focuses on information governance and our client data. So what are our responsibilities? What are best practices? That report is full of not only best practices, but checklists. So I mentioned earlier kind of having vendor checklists and best practices. There's some in there that hopefully folks would find useful. The HIPAA Omnibus Task Force report, again, lots of great detail in there as well. We were fortunate to have a couple of privacy attorneys from McDermott, Will, and Emery help us in putting this together. So we've got some great content in there. The Matter Mobility Task Force report, and again, that's talking about the data that's transferring from firm to firm. Lots of detail into kind of the mechanics and best practices of that as well. Emerging Trends Task Force report. This task force report is focused on outside counsel guidelines. This is a topic that the group this year thought was a hot topic. And in this Emerging Trends Task Force report, the group actually went out in advance and did some industry surveys. So there's some industry survey data in there about how firms are dealing with outside counsel guidelines, volume, things of that nature that would likely be very interesting. And Peter asked the question, how are these reports available? If you go to the Iron Mountain website and you search for law firm information governance, you will see you'll get the hits for these, and you'll be able to download them. And if there's any issues, then you can email me. And then Emerging Trends Task Force report, which is the emerging role of the information governance professional. And I know that I'm moving right along here. The Information Governance Initiative Annual Report. This is another document that I would suggest that everybody go take a look at if you haven't. The IGI was formed in February. Bennett Borden, Jason Barron, Jay Broods from Drinker Biddle, and Barclay Blair from Via Lumina launched this effort. Really going out, collecting a lot of industry information, thought leaders. They've got an advisory board together from a variety of different industries, putting out a lot of good content. So I think this would be another good resource for everyone. Other industry efforts, the ABA is kind of getting their hands in things now a little bit with big data and IG. And there's my contact info. Robin, how did I do?
Leigh, magnificent, absolutely magnificent. We are so happy to have had you with us, and thank the Orrick firm for allowing you to spend time with us. A question that comes up, and it's certainly come up here and in other discussions that I'm involved with in my board service, is the evolution of governance. We're seeing, as you stated, governance is basically the strategic use of information to benefit a company. Do you see at some point in the future Discovery being managed by information governance, a CGO?
I think that is a role that will be likely to emerge, either a CGO, and the IGI report, the annual report, actually calls that out, and that's one of the things that they are also kind of predicting as an emerging role, is the chief IG officer. I think too, probably a lot. There's a chief data officer or chief security officer. I think those are probably kind of the three areas where we're likely to see information governance fall.
So CISOs, I'm seeing that as well in some of the job descriptions for positions that manage governance within corporations. They're looking for security credentialing. So I don't know that I'm seeing it land in one place, and was curious about your opinion about it or your thoughts. You mentioned, like I said, I saw an interview of you where you talk about governance being the best thing to happen to eDiscovery. I've heard it analogized that eDiscovery and governance is the difference between reactive and proactive. How do you feel about that?
I think that's spot on. Being in records management, and again, dating myself, I've been in the legal field for 30 years, and I fell into the records field in 2002. And records, I think, has always been something that we've struggled with. And if you talk to any records manager that's been in the industry for any amount of time, I think they've always felt that they've been walking an uphill battle, and lots of struggles to get the seat at the table and to get the executive level sponsorship to buy in to managing information the way that it should be. And I think that what eDiscovery has done it's brought the executive level attention to what we've been trying to do for quite some time.
Absolutely, absolutely. I had a question come in. Someone wanted to know how you recommend securing HIPAA and PII information.
Oh, that's a good one. And I don't know that there's really one good answer for that. It's something that a lot of firms are still working through. What a lot of firms, some firms are now doing, we talked a lot about this at the symposium, are putting together kind of a workflow that starts at the new business intake process, and whether there is going to be that expected intake of any sensitive information, and making sure that the proper measures are taken to secure that data. I think that we're also looking at DLP systems, or data loss prevention, and that type of thing. So, specifically, I wish I had one recommendation.
Sure.
Ask me in a couple of months.
And we may just do that. We may invite you back. Well, listen, this has been an absolutely hour-packed, informative session, and we are so grateful to have you on our Knowledge Leadership series for this month. Again, thank you to all of you who took your valuable time to dial in and spend your day with us and learn a little about governance and the law firm from Leigh. And Leigh, thank you to you and Orrick for your time today in visiting with us. I would ask all of you, when you log off, to please take a second and fill out the survey so that we can plan our 2015 educational curriculum, and you'll be getting a thank you note from Ready Talk that will contain a link where you can download Leigh's presentation. She has graciously offered it to those who attended today. Any parting words, Leigh?
Reiterating your thanks, Robin, for everyone spending the last hour with me. And if anyone has any questions or follow-up they'd like to talk about, I'm happy to chat.
Thanks, all of you, and bye now.
Thanks.